Donald Trump's re-election promises to shake up the global stage in ways no one can fully predict. In his first term, Trump had already altered the tone of American politics, making bold decisions that impacted allies and rivals worldwide. Now, with his return, the question remains, how far is he willing to go? The impact of his choices in the coming years could be profound, with effects spanning from emerging economies to rival superpowers like China and Russia. Behind each new promise from Trump is a vision of a United States playing hard to defend its interests, but with this stance, he also escalates international tensions and tests long-standing alliances. What we're likely to see is not just a series of ideas but a ramp-up of policies that could reshape the global balance of power. Thus, Trump's re-election signals not only a continuation of America First, but a deepening of a strategy that could impact millions of lives around the world. As the geopolitical landscape shifts, America's position under Trump's leadership may open the door to a new chapter of rivalries and redefine allegiances. The consequences of this re-election reach far beyond the United States. They will shape the world we know, bringing new uncertainties and questions. What will be the real impact of American policies on the future of the planet? Trump's new economic agenda promises an unprecedented boost, tax cuts and intense deregulation to unleash maximum purchasing power in the U.S. economy. The idea is simple: make it easier for companies and individuals so the economy picks up speed. With fewer restrictions and more cash in circulation, the goal is to drive consumption. But this ambitious approach comes with a cost. By increasing public spending and reducing market restrictions, the risk of inflation also rises, and not just in the United States. With more money circulating and fewer controls, prices tend to rise, putting pressure on the American cost of living and creating a global ripple effect. This expansionary policy could trigger inflationary waves, given that the United States, as the world's largest economy, influences international prices. And if we add tariffs on foreign goods, especially Chinese products, which could reach up to 61%, the result is an even greater increase in the cost of imported goods and a direct impact on global supply chains, which become more expensive and uncertain. Behind these tariffs and deregulation lies the idea of protecting and stimulating U.S. domestic production, but the side effects are felt by consumers worldwide. This more severe protectionism could end up limiting access to products that depend on Chinese components, prompting a race for alternatives and affecting economies globally, which face higher import costs. With the risk of inflation rising, the U.S. Federal Reserve may keep interest rates high for a longer period, a measure aimed at controlling price increases but with significant consequences for the rest of the world. High interest rates make the U.S. market safer for foreign investors who seek better returns with minimal risk. Amid this capital shift to the U.S., emerging markets often suffer the most. The capital outflow from these markets places downward pressure on their currencies, leading to currency depreciation and making imports much more expensive. Furthermore, the need to attract investment forces these countries to raise their own interest rates, which makes credit more expensive and slows the local economy. This situation creates a tough cycle. In an effort to stay competitive, emerging countries end up compromising growth and facing challenges in controlling their own inflation. As the dollar strengthens and investments concentrate in the United States, emerging nations also lose bargaining power in trade negotiations and feel the impact on prices for raw materials and food. Although this rise in American interest rates is meant to stabilize the U.S. economy, it generates a wave of economic instability that can affect everything from basic prices to global economic growth. Trump's re-election promises to reinforce a tougher stance toward China, aiming to reduce U.S. dependence through targeted tariffs and sanctions. Trump views America's reliance on Chinese products as a vulnerability, especially in sensitive sectors like technology and manufacturing. His plan: intensify tariffs on Chinese imports, which could reach up to 61%, and encourage American companies to bring operations back to U.S. soil or to safer regions less exposed to authoritarian Chinese policies. This move is also seen as a way to protect strategic American technologies, preventing innovations in critical areas like artificial intelligence and semiconductors from being exposed to the influence of an authoritarian regime. For the United States, maintaining control over these innovations is not just an economic matter, it's also a pillar of national security, given that many of these technological advances could have military and intelligence implications. However, this strategy affects not only US-China relations but also global supply chains, pressuring economies and companies worldwide to seek alternatives. Countries that export to China or depend on its materials are beginning to reconsider their partnerships, creating a more fragmented global environment. In the Middle East, Trump's re-election signals an even tougher policy toward Iran, a country he sees as a constant threat to regional security and American interests. During his first term, Trump did not hesitate to exit the nuclear deal with Iran, imposing strict sanctions that severely impacted the Iranian economy. Now, with a second term, he is likely to intensify this hard line, reinforcing sanctions and isolating the Iranian regime. The goal is clear: to weaken Iran in order to contain its influence in the region and protect strategic allies such as Israel and Saudi Arabia. This firm stance has the potential to raise tensions in one of the most sensitive areas of the global geopolitical landscape. Unconditional support for U.S. allies in the Middle East, such as Israel, not only strengthens American presence in the region but also intensifies conflicts, as Iran and its regional partners are likely to react to this pressure. This scenario creates a continuous environment of tension, with the risk of escalation in indirect conflicts and localized attacks that could impact regional security and, consequently, the global energy market. The global impact of this policy could be significant. Any increase in tensions in the Middle East tends to reverberate in oil prices, affecting economies worldwide and raising energy costs. For countries dependent on oil imports, this could mean additional economic pressure, especially in a recent global context already marked by inflation and high interest rates. Trump's re-election policies toward Europe could strengthen the security and energy independence of European allies. By criticizing Germany's reliance on Russian gas, Trump encourages Europe to reduce vulnerabilities in its energy system, especially in a global climate of rivalry between major powers. For the U.S., this approach seeks to protect its allies from potential external pressures, promoting a more cohesive and self-sufficient Western bloc. At the same time, these pressures reinforce Europe's initiative for strategic autonomy, pushing the European Union to develop its own defense and security capabilities. Ultimately, this strengthens Europe's position on the global stage and contributes to a more balanced alliance system, where Europe and the US collaborate as partners with complementary strengths. With Trump, the US aims to retain influence but also encourages Europe to become a more independent player, especially in the energy sector. Another key point relates to Trump's economic agenda, which envisions a significant shift in global production chains, reinforcing the trend of deglobalization. Through incentives such as tax cuts and pro-industry policies, the government seeks to encourage American companies to bring operations back to US soil or, at least, to nearby regions. This movement, known as nearshoring, aims to reduce US dependence on distant and unpredictable suppliers like China, strengthening the nation's economic security and creating new jobs. In recent years, crises like the COVID-19 pandemic and trade tensions with China have exposed the fragility of a globalized economy, where a problem in one region can trigger a series of disruptions in others. With a more regionalized supply chain, the U.S. hopes to reduce its vulnerability to such risks and ensure that essential goods production is less susceptible to external interruptions. Relocating industries also favors job creation in traditional sectors, particularly manufacturing, addressing a demand from many Americans for more domestic job opportunities. Additionally, nearby countries like Mexico and Canada may also benefit, becoming strategic destinations for American companies seeking proximity to the U.S. market without the higher costs of domestic production. On the other hand, this new economic order could impact various global markets that depend on U.S. consumption and imports. For countries exporting manufactured goods, the drop in American demand could present an economic challenge, requiring rapid adaptations and greater diversification of their markets. In a second Trump term, Latin America may experience a decline in direct U.S. presence, as the administration focuses on disputes with major powers like China and Russia. This priority to counter global strategic influences leads the U.S. to allocate fewer resources and less attention to Latin American issues, allowing the region more freedom to develop partnerships with other powers. This U.S. disengagement opens an opportunity for Latin American countries to strengthen their economic and political autonomy, finding new commercial and strategic allies. With less U.S. involvement, China is likely to continue expanding in the region, seizing the opportunity to intensify economic and diplomatic partnerships. Beijing has invested heavily in infrastructure, energy, and technology in countries like Brazil, Argentina, and Chile, consolidating its influence year after year. This relationship allows Latin America to access essential resources for development, particularly in long-term projects, while offering China an even stronger presence in America's backyard, a strategic move that positions China as an alternative to traditional U.S.-led financing and trade. Although Trump's distancing creates space for other countries, he maintains certain red lines in the region, such as countering trafficking and terrorism, in addition to security partnerships in areas like the Caribbean. This monitoring stance, despite reduced direct involvement, aims to prevent actors considered threats, such as Russia and Iran, from establishing a significant military influence on the continent. Regarding Russia, the sanctions policy against Putin's country is expected to remain strict, with new restrictions directly targeting strategic sectors such as energy, mining, and technology exports. The objective is to economically pressure the Russian government and limit its ability to fund military and foreign initiatives in strategic regions like Eastern Europe and the Middle East. These sanctions restrict Russia's access to Western markets and critical technologies, aiming to isolate the Russian economy from major global trade networks. However, Russia has adapted its strategies to circumvent these sanctions by using trade triangulation. This approach involves partnerships with countries like Kazakhstan, Armenia, and Uzbekistan, which serve as intermediaries for exporting Russian products, allowing these goods to reach global markets through alternative routes. Additionally, strengthened trade relations with major powers like China and India help Russia sustain its economic base and avoid complete collapse, even under severe sanctions. Trump's re-election also promises to intensify the strategic rivalry between the U.S. and China, escalating this competition beyond mere trade. Under his administration, the rivalry extends to areas such as technology, military security, and diplomatic influence. Trump is expected to strengthen alliances in the Indo-Pacific, building partnerships with countries like Japan, South Korea, and Australia to contain China's expansion in the region, especially in critical areas like the South China Sea and Taiwan. This cooperative strategy aims to limit China's military presence and protect allies who share U.S. strategic interests. A crucial area of this competition is the technology sector, where the Trump administration enforces strict export restrictions on advanced technology, particularly semiconductors and artificial intelligence, as mentioned earlier. These advancements are key to China's innovation capabilities and its military and economic ambitions. By restricting China's access to cutting-edge technologies, Trump seeks to slow the growth of a China that could rival the US in essential sectors. This tech rivalry not only shapes industry but also creates a global divide, forcing countries to choose which superpower they will align with in terms of technology and digital security systems. In the Indo-Pacific, the tensions involving Taiwan illustrate just how far this conflict could escalate, as we discussed in a previous GlobalFlow documentary. Trump may reinforce support for Taiwan, providing weapons and military assistance to ensure that the island maintains its autonomy. This heightens regional tensions and places the US in direct confrontation with China, which views Taiwan as part of its territory. The competition for influence in the region could lead to a new arms race in the Indo-Pacific, where regional powers strengthen their defenses and form military alliances to protect against potential conflicts. Trump's environmental policy in his second term is likely to continue focusing on deregulating environmental standards to boost oil and gas production within the US. The strategy aims to strengthen the energy sector by reducing restrictions on activities such as extraction and refining, enabling companies to expand their operations. This approach promotes U.S. energy autonomy and reduces reliance on imports, which has significant global implications for the fossil fuel market. By strengthening domestic production, the U.S. can maintain more stable oil prices, providing greater predictability for the energy market. Besides promoting energy independence, the expansion of domestic production positions the U.S. as a more influential player on the global energy stage, decreasing its vulnerability to external crises and gaining greater control over prices. However, this fossil fuel-driven policy impacts international efforts to combat climate change. With the intensification of rivalries among major powers, the future of global geopolitics appears to be leaning toward a more multipolar and tense scenario. The US, China, Russia, and the European Union stand out as centers of power competing for influence, forming alliances and strategies to expand their global presence. This context promotes the formation of economic and military blocs, where countries are pressured to choose sides and adjust their trade and diplomatic relations according to their security interests, as seen with the formation of the BRICS. This new configuration is also expected to impact the global economy, which is moving toward a more fragmented scenario, where powers tend to adopt self-sufficiency in economic security policies, moving away from highly extended production chains and seeking greater internal control. For smaller countries, this new phase of competition could present economic and political challenges, as international cooperation may become more complex and subject to strategic interests. To deepen understanding of these dynamics, certain readings can help explore these themes in more depth, such as The Age of Revolutions by Fareed Zakaria, which examines shifts in global power and the reconfiguration of alliances among nations. Another recommendation is Chip Wars by Chris Miller, which details the strategic importance of semiconductors and Taiwan's role as a crucial center of the tech economy. In summary, Trump's re-election is likely to significantly impact the global economy and relations among major powers. With a firmer stance on trade, defense, and environmental issues, he redefines the U.S. position on the international stage, deepening rivalries and stimulating a new phase of global competition. The emerging scenario is one of an increasingly polarized world, where alliances and economic blocs reorganize, creating both opportunities and challenges for countries looking to strategically position themselves.